Welcome to the Chronicles of Justice, the Yolo County District Attorney's podcast series. Today I'm joined with several guests to talk about our neighborhood court and more specifically our homeless restorative justice program. I'm Rob Strange. I'm the chief investigator at the office. We really pride ourselves on our mission of seeking justice and doing justice, and we definitely consider ourselves to be innovators in our world, in our work industry. But the last few years have challenged us. In the wake of so much criminal justice reform and system changes, is there a better and more effective way to do our business? Well, enter neighborhood court. And we'll hear more about that from some of the experts who are running those programs for us here at the office. But we like to talk about success stories as much as possible. And today, one of our guests that we have here is Dan. And Dan's actually a participant in our homeless restorative justice program. Welcome, Dan. And I'm just curious, can you tell the folks out there a little bit about who you are and kind of how you came to be involved in the homeless program?
I lived in Washington in early 2000s. Then I came back to California when my mom was sick and to take care of her before she passed away. And then after that, it went down, I think.
Yeah. Now, when you were in Washington, I think you mentioned that you held a job for almost 10 years. What were you doing? What were you doing up there?
I was the lead chef at a steakhouse. I started out just being like a fry cook, and then I ended up being the lead chef and running the kitchen.
Well, that's great. And then, so your mom's health turned bad. You ended up in California.
I went to the Bay Area, then I came to Yolo County when my niece and her husband, I came and stayed with them, and then they got arrested and all that, and I watched their house while they were in jail.
Fair to say that after moving back, you did bounce around a bit, and stability was not there. You kind of give an indication that things were kind of spiraling.
Oh, yeah.
During that period of time, as things were spiraling, how bad did things get? Were you living still at people's houses, or were you living on the street?
When I was in the Bay Area, because I grew up there, I knew people, so they would let me stay on their couch a night or two or whatever and stuff. But once I got here to Yolo County, I did not know a single soul. So I didn't have the friends and all that stuff. And then eventually, when I did become homeless, then I was on the street for the first time ever in my life. That was like March or April of last year.
What's it like to try to sleep overnight?
That's hard. That's why I would stick with friends that were also homeless and stuff. Because then there'd be like protection or whatever. Because there's quite a few of us. But then the police rolled through one night and said, can't have groups of more than 4 people. It's against the law or whatever now.
So eventually things were bad enough that it sounds like you had some regular contact with the police for a period of time. You ended up in the
Definitely.
system. And so you ended up with a case that came to the DA's office.
Yes, I did.
Tell me about that.
Well, I went to my court date and stuff, and one of the first court date I remember hearing the district attorney or whatever, I don't know if it was you, Chris, or another one at the time, but they said, or the judge had said it was $1,400 some odd fine at the time, and I just heard that and I was like, whoa. And then the DA said, wait a minute, Your Honor, we have this new program starting up that we think Dan would be perfect for.
So what are some elements of the program that you've experienced so far? Who have you interacted with?
Well, I've interacted with Chris and then Deanna, the social worker and stuff, and they both have been great. I mean, because everything has been geared towards bettering myself, bettering my life, and putting me in a better position to go forward.
So another important part, though, about coming out of homelessness is trying to find a job.
Yeah, definitely.
And sometimes I imagine it doesn't feel like people will take the chance on you. So I wanted to kind of talk about that with some of the folks who have employed Dan, and frankly, it sounds like they're taking advantage of his history in the restaurant business and history in the kitchen. And so here today with us are Marco and Guinevere from Guinevere's Café and Bistro, located here in Woodland at 2nd and Dead Cat Alley. It's actually right next to the DA's office. I'm just curious, when Dan approached you guys, what was it that you saw in Dan? What?
Well, Dan didn't approach us. I was putting the chairs out and the tables out in the morning, and I walked up to him. He had a nice bike. I noticed he was carrying all his stuff on it. It was ingenious. So I said, I like your bike, and I started talking, and I said, well, you want to help me and make some money? And I didn't know he was in the restaurant business at all. And he told me he had been. And one thing led to another. Then he started washing dishes, and then I showed him how to make our pizza dough, and he just had a Midas touch with it. And the cinnamon rolls, I showed him the recipe, and everything I showed him, he made better. And I not only, it's hard, what I feel is that people do want to work. And a lot of people in our society fall out. And then you can't get a job. You have to apply online. Nobody wants to meet you face to face. So we're actually creating homeless people, and then we're criminalizing people for being poor. One of the things we do at Guinevere is we kind of think that all of the food from Yolo County is soul food. And we started a Soil to Soul movement. In fact, we're interviewing a big rice farmer this morning. But the point is, we have soil here, and it feeds the world, and our people should be fed. And we should have homes for them, and we should have services for them. And if our justice system can help people instead of put them in jail all the time, we're going to go broke by putting all the people in jail that are going homeless right now, because the middle class is becoming homeless. And so we at Guinevere, when we look out our window and I see somebody that I know is hungry, I take them a piece of pizza. I mean, I have an extra piece of pizza for people. Yeah. And because of that, people, they're more happy.
And speaking of hunger, one really wonderful thing about Dan is he's really hungry. He's hungry to work. He's hungry to better himself and to help people out. And he's very disciplined, and he just desires work. He loves it. He wants to work even more than we'd like to have him work, because that's just Dan's mentality.
Well, it's great that you guys have come together and taken that opportunity and not just looked the other way when you saw somebody out there who was hungry. And it sounds like you really discovered a soul, like you said, a soul that was hungry for something.
I think it's easy to judge people and even judge the police. I mean, I think the DA's office gets a bad rap a lot of the time too, that they're just going after people. And that's not the case. People have feelings, but we also have laws. And then we have homeless people out in front of buildings. And to be honest with you, I don't want homeless people hanging out in front of my restaurant. But if they do, I want them to look nice, and I want them to act nice, and I want them to be part of the community. Funny thing is, I would pay Dan, and he would go out and take care of the other homeless people with this money. I says, Dan, you have enough money now, don't you? He says, no. I said, well, quit giving your money to everybody else. So it's kind of been like Dan has a big heart like we do.
And this is one of those things where helping out our fellow man is something that we're doing. I can tell you, as somebody that's been in law enforcement for almost 20 years, the initial thought of the neighborhood court program for us, I didn't know what to think, to be quite honest, because I had been part of the system that was very traditional, and it was the way we knew it to be. And so enter neighborhood court, and Chris Bulkeley is here with me from neighborhood court program. And Chris, just so everyone can kind of get the basic overview, can you help the listeners understand why we went about the neighborhood court program and what we're hoping to accomplish by it?
The goal of the neighborhood court program was to get the community involved in resolving quality of life misdemeanors. And so using restorative justice, we focus on what is the harm to a victim, if there's a victim involved, to the community and to the offender from the criminal conduct. And we use a facilitated conference model where the panelists or volunteers represent the community and go through a 3-step approach to resolving the case. The homeless program is an extension of that conference process to address homeless offenders. We're trying to address what I would call the revolving door process for homeless individuals to get arrested for quality of life offenses, whether it be drunk in public, vandalism, those types of offenses. The police, for example, will make an arrest. They take the person to jail. They get released from jail. They don't show up in court. They do it again. A warrant goes out for their arrest. They get arrested. They get taken to Woodland. They get released from the jail. They don't show up. And the underlying issue is never addressed. The county, many of the cities, is adopting or has adopted a housing first philosophy. And the goal is to try and house individuals and then provide services to improve their condition. And that's challenging in this region due to the lack of housing. But it has proven to be successful. It's less expensive to house a person and get them into a doctor as opposed to ER visits, incarceration, and those types of issues. So they're able to actually decrease the chronically homeless population significantly while also saving money. So not only is it a program like this, a more humane way of addressing homelessness, it also makes economic sense. And what's really neat about Dan's case is that he's working. He's been given an opportunity at Guinevere's to work, and that will assist him in getting housing. And so I think that's kind of what this program's about. Hopefully be able to get more individuals employed with local businesses. And so what we're trying to do is, with the homeless program, is to take those individuals out of the criminal justice system and put them into this diversion program. What's unique about this is that we use the existing conference model from neighborhood court, and we add a social worker practitioner into the mix.
All right, so let's hear a little bit from Deanna, who is our social worker in the neighborhood court program. And I'm curious, Deanna, to hear kind of a little bit of I guess not so high of an elevation overview of your role in the program and how that helps our homelessness restorative justice program.
Like Chris said, this is just a different avenue from the traditional justice system. A lot of our homeless offenders are going in and out of prison. Where is this getting them? You know, what kind of services is it really connecting them to? So I hope this is more of a newfound hope for them, a new beginning to improve their lives. So to start off with our homeless offenders, we have an assessment process, and from that assessment process, we develop a case plan to improve the homeless individual's life in 4 areas, as Chris mentioned. Housing, we can't guarantee housing, but we're pointing them in the right directions, getting some applications in, connecting them to housing services, and then the second domain is self-sufficiency, so improving the income. Dan is ideal in that area because he has employment and he is getting income through that. But we are helping them get public assistance and benefits through the service centers at the Health and Human Services as well. The third domain is behavioral health, so helping them improve and stabilize their mental health, as well as looking kind of at the cycle of change and where they want to change with substance use if that's a problem for them. And the fourth domain is physical health, and that's obviously important. A lot of our homeless individuals hasn't been to the doctors in 3 or 4 years, so getting them connections again, getting them to the proper services they might need.
It sounds like even if we just improve one of the 4 domains, if we help facilitate that sounds like a success story in some ways. I know there's clearly other domains that we hope to broadly assist with, but really it sounds like success is really in the eyes of the beholder.
Absolutely. It's all kind of an individualized case plan as well. We'll have some individuals that might, can shoot for the stars like Dan, but then there'll be some individuals that we have to get them on Social Security insurance for the rest of their life because their mental health isn't stable enough or they have a physical disability. So it's kind of working with that homeless individual at their level. And I think one thing I really want to address is connectiveness. Connectiveness, number one, back to the community through this case conference process with the community volunteers that we work with. Number 2, connection to social services. And then number 3, I think when there is more stability in these homeless individuals' lives, it's connection back to sometimes family and friends or kids that they haven't seen for years. And I think that kind of all brings around, and then it comes back to that whole connection of community. And like Dan working at Guinevere's, I mean, what a success story there.
Well, thank you all, and thanks for this theme that I think we pushed forward today about connection and about kind of the front-end investment having just a long-term logical outcome that makes sense. So thank you, Dan, Guinevere, and Marco, Chris and Deanna. Thank you again for joining us and sharing with all of our listeners out there what it is that's going on in neighborhood court in our homeless restorative justice program. And Dan, your success story, and I wish you the best as
on my way to success.
I wish you the best as that journey goes forward. And so thank you all for joining us for the Yolo County District Attorney's Chronicles of Justice podcast. To learn more about the DA's office and some of our other great programs, please visit us at yoloda.org or on social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.